Presidents can be divisive, but the one thing we can all agree on is their height. So today I'll be drawing all 45 US presidents in height order, from our tiniest Oval Office goblins to our towering presidential string beans, while sharing some of their most unhinged stories. Like this president, who had a habit of dropping his pants and swinging his Johnson around to unsuspecting White House staff. Or this sick freak who married his dead wife's niece. You're gonna learn stuff you wish you never knew, and we're not stopping there because I'm a firm believer that every politician deserves to be made fun of. So we're gonna start off with our tiniest victim, the Hobbit King himself, James Madison. James Madison is the tiniest president we've ever had, but he's even smaller than you think. If I'm being honest, I just assumed that everybody during this time looked like a little munchkin-sized Cabbage Patch Kid, but in reality, this dude was actually freaking tiny. Not only did he get absolutely height-mogged by his colleagues George Washington and Thomas Jefferson, but also his wife, most men during that time, freaking Napoleon, and me when I was in 6th grade. And despite probably not being able to reach the top shelf at a grocery store, America straight up would not exist if it wasn't for Madison fathering the country's most important child, the Constitution. And this next guy's child straight up wouldn't exist if he wasn't the literal definition of a creepy uncle. Benjamin Harrison. You ever get so sad that your wife died that you go and marry her niece? Yeah, me neither. But that's exactly what this next president did. After Benjamin's wife of 39 years passed away, he decided he wasn't done with her family yet. So he married her niece, who was 25 years younger and first cousins by blood with his own children. So sweet. And for all you Reddit freaks that are defending this saying,
"Ooh, they were not related by blood. Big deal."
Or,
"You imply that Harrison is somehow a bad guy in all of this."
you should be investigated. See, that tells me that you probably don't have any nieces and mostly refer to women as
females.
But guess what? Benjamin's kids agreed with me because after their dad married their cousin, they refused to even attend the wedding. And unfortunately, Benjamin's wasn't even the creepiest presidential marriage. Oh, just you wait. Martin Van Buren. Martin Van Buren is both the weirdest person I've ever seen and one of the most boring people I've ever had to research. Basically, he installed a luxury toilet in the White House and I wanted to draw him naked because I'm a sick bastard. That's all. But he's not the last goblin-looking creature we've had in the White House. William McKinley. William McKinley was assassinated before he could ever play one of the greatest Draculas in history, in my opinion. Come on, look at those brows. Rest in peace. John Adams. John Adams was proof that even our founding fathers got horny. Over the course of his life, he wrote thousands of love letters to his wife Abigail, which honestly, is pretty cute. One of them reads, "I hereby order you to give as many kisses and as many hours of your company after 9 o'clock as he shall please to demand." This reads like a flirty text from a fedora-wearing Reddit moderator. I guess this was some pretty hot stuff back then, and it worked for Abigail because they stayed married for 54 years. And honestly, good for them for keeping the spark alive. And while this couple was engaged in some pretty complex foreplay, our next president, John's son, had no problem getting naked and jumping right into it. John Quincy Adams. You know that old guy walking through your LA Fitness locker room completely butt naked? Well, imagine he's the president and you get John Quincy Adams. Because he treated all of Washington, D.C. like his own LA Fitness locker room, frequently swimming down the Potomac River wearing nothing but a swim cap and goggles. And he did this so often that everybody knew about it. One time, a female journalist, desperate to interview the president, showed up while he was swimming, sat on his clothes, and refused to give them back until he agreed to do an interview with her. Luckily for the interviewer, Quincy agreed, because things may have gone a little differently if it had been one of our other presidents who had no problem whipping it out in public. Ulysses S. Grant. You know that scene in Rogue One where Darth Vader murks all the rebels? That's basically what Grant did to the KKK. After the South lost the Civil War, these sore losers decided to start their pathetic little racist club tormenting and killing black people in the South. Realizing the South had learned nothing from their first ass whooping, Grant sent federal troops after the KKK to remind them who their daddy was, arresting them, prosecuting them, and making them his bitch. But this next president had an entirely different enemy he had to fight: his stomach. Zachary Taylor. I have an irrational fear of dying in an embarrassing way, and Zachary Taylor is the reason why. On 4th of July in 1850, to beat the heat, Zachary gorged on mountains of cherries and glass after glass of iced milk. Well, Shortly after, his insides turned into hot lava, he got violently ill, had probably the most catastrophic diarrhea in history, and died 5 days later. Modern historians claim that he died of natural causes, but I don't know how shitting your intestines out of your ass qualifies as natural to anyone. All I gotta say is those better have been some damn good cherries and milk. James K. Polk. If being boring was a pro sport, Polk would be the unanimous MVP. His wife banned dancing, gambling, and excessive drinking in the White House. He didn't like jokes, and I don't like talking about him, so we're moving on.
William Henry Harrison.
William Henry Harrison is the only president to die from his yapping. At the ripe age of 70, this ghoul decided it was a good idea to break the record for the longest inauguration speech in US history. Only problem, it was 48 degrees out and he wore no hat, no coat, spoke for almost 2 hours straight, and was a literal grandpa. Even though he died a month later from pneumonia, at least he broke the record for the longest speech ever. That's worth it, right, guys? Right?
Rutherford B. Hayes.
Rutherford B. Hayes' presidency made watching paint dry seem like the Super Bowl. He had no riz, no jokes, and no alcohol. Next.
Harry S. Truman.
Truman was the first president to go to a Disney park, but he absolutely would not go on one ride. Dumbo! Because as a lifelong Democrat, he thought it would be a bad look to get caught riding an elephant, the symbol of the Republican Party. Based.
Millard Fillmore.
I never knew that Alec Baldwin was president. That's all.
Jimmy Carter.
Political careers have been crashed by so many things. Scandal, corruption, but for Jimmy, all it took was a cute little bunny rabbit. While out canoeing on a beautiful day in his hometown, Jimmy noticed a swamp rabbit rapidly swimming towards his canoe. Jimmy may have overreacted a bit, splashing his paddle around, hooting and hollering, not realizing something far more dangerous lurked in the woods. A White House photographer who snapped a pic of the whole event. And you can bet that photo made national headlines as everyone used it to basically brand Jimmy as a little bitch. Poor Jimmy. But we can all learn a valuable lesson here. If you ever plan on doing anything cringe as hell, make sure no one's filming. But this next guy probably wouldn't care.
Calvin Coolidge.
I don't really trust quiet people, and this next president proves my point. Calvin was known for being a very quiet man, speaking only a few words in most interactions, but what he lacked in yapping ability, he more than made up for in other ways. Calvin loved animals, but not in a normal way. You and I might have cats, dogs, or a lizard if you're adventurous, but Calvin had Billy the pygmy hippo, Rebecca Raccoon, who was sent to the White House to be eaten for Thanksgiving, but became a beloved pet, lion cubs, Smokey the bobcat, Enoch the goose, Bruno the black bear, and an antelope, just to name a few. What Calvin really wanted, though, was a horse he could ride, but when the Secret Service refused to allow it for being too dangerous, Calvin installed a mechanical horse in the White House instead. Apparently, staff would find him whooping like a cowboy, riding his robot horse 3 times a day. But the Secret Service's nightmares did not end there, because Calvin's other favorite hobby was pressing the alarm buttons on his Oval Office desk, then ducking under his desk to hide, and watching Secret Service crash out thinking they just let the President of the United States get kidnapped. No doubt, Calvin was giggling like a little schoolgirl the entire time. And while Calvin was known for being a quiet psycho, this next guy was known for being the loudest of them all. Teddy Roosevelt. I want you to think of the most badass thing you've ever done and accept that it will never come close to what this next president did. Teddy was set to give a big speech while campaigning in Milwaukee, a 50-page speech to be exact. But before he could reach the podium, some psycho shot him in the chest. But instead of going to the hospital, like all us sackless beta-cuck males would do, this absolute mad lad spoke for 90 minutes straight, saying, "It takes more than that to kill a bull moose." And honestly, I have no idea how he was able to walk off stage afterwards with balls that giant. But if Teddy had maxed out his badass legend stats, this next president did the same, except in the racist freak category. Andrew Johnson. I have a theory that the most racist people also happen to be the most batshit insane, and Andrew Johnson is my exhibit A. Johnson, in my opinion, is a shitty human being because he fought against giving basic rights to black people after the Civil War. That, among other things, led him to become the first president to ever be impeached. To calm his nerves during that stressful process, he decided to live out his ratatouille fantasy, befriending a family of white mice hiding in his bedroom. He fed them, gave them water, and probably asked them to teach him how to cook, while his daughter Martha attempted to commit mouse genocide only a few floors away. So not only did he live in Looneyland, but his legacy is being one of the biggest stains on America's democracy, unlike this next guy who was basically forgotten to time.
Franklin Pierce.
If any president had a reason to drink themselves to death, it was definitely Pierce. He had 3 sons, and none of them made it past the age of 11. The first died 3 days after being born, the second died at age 4 from typhus, and his last son was run over by a train right in front of him. So pour one out for Pierce, next time you're feeling patriotic. Dwight D. Eisenhower. Destroying Nazi Germany on the battlefield was nothing compared to Eisenhower's next foe, the squirrels tearing up the White House lawn. Dwight was a golf addict, often playing 2 rounds a week, so when squirrels began tearing up his White House putting green, he pretty much labeled them as domestic terrorists. He ordered his valet to shoot them on sight, but the Secret Service decided secretly relocating them instead would be better optics for the President of the United States. Good thing it worked, because they may have saved the president from nuking his own lawn.
Woodrow Wilson.
Besides being a piece of shit white supremacist, Wilson also seemingly really wanted to be in a Conjuring film. Apparently, Wilson was fascinated by Ouija boards, so much so that when someone asked if he would be re-elected, he reportedly replied,
The Ouija board says yes.
and even after he died, his wife Edith allegedly tried using one to contact him. No thank you. But the only thing creepier than willingly trying to talk to dead people, in my opinion, is what this next president did.
Grover Cleveland.
What Grover Cleveland did with his best friend's daughter is definitely a reason my children will never be having a sleepover. Grover had a best friend named Oscar, and they were so close that Grover was set to manage his estate in the case of his death. Well, that day came when Oscar died in a carriage accident, and Grover decided to go above and beyond, helping raise his 11-year-old daughter Frances, who Grover had known from when she was just born. Grover was 27 when she was born, by the way. You know where this is going. Yeah, he married her. He was 49 and she was 21 years old. Apparently it was for companionship, but they had a kid together. Look, my dad taught me about the birds and the bees, and I don't remember the section saying that the power of friendship was enough to make a baby. Okay? I'm sure his buddy Oscar would have been stoked to hear that he waited for him to die to marry his daughter. I guess boundaries hadn't been invented yet. Joe Biden. You know this man by many names. Sleepy Joe, Joe Brandon. But you may have never heard one of his other famous nicknames, Amtrak Joe, because he used to ride the train daily between DC and Delaware, no doubt saying some batshit insane things to other passengers along the way.
Poor kids are just as bright and just as talented as white kids.
And if Joe Biden was the Kobe of gaffes, this next president was his Shaquille O'Neal.
George W. Bush.
After his presidency, George W. Bush brought his talent for creating disasters to the art world. Listen, I can't really paint for shit traditionally, so I have no place judging the quality of the paintings. All I can say is I cannot stop thinking about this Putin painting. It looks like he got caught eating a jar of paint and has less than 10 minutes to get to the hospital before he dies. But I'm not one to bash hobbies. Lord knows I've got some weird ones, so go off, George. But I will be bashing this next guy.
Richard Nixon.
Although Nixon was most famously known for overseeing one of the biggest cover-ups in US history, the biggest crimes were the things he would put in his mouth. Nixon's favorite breakfast was apparently cottage cheese with pineapple. Definitely an odd choice, but not criminal. However, the Secret Service reported that they'd caught him feeding not only his dog, but himself dog treats on more than one occasion. I know everybody's got their own tastes, but I'm just saying, somebody should have known something was fishy about this guy by his eating habits. Still not as fishy as this next guy, though.
Herbert Hoover.
Herbert Hoover wins the award for picking up the worst hobby during the Great Depression. It's just not really a great look when you're out every weekend catching fish while everyone else stands in breadland starving. And while this next guy didn't fish, he did like cosplaying as a whale.
William H. Taft.
If you were a bathtub being shipped to the Taft White House, it was practically a death sentence. Because Taft was almost 6 feet tall, 350 pounds, and he loved taking baths. One time at a hotel in Jersey, Taft displays so much water when getting in the tub that it flooded the floor and dripped water on the guests in the dining room below. All I can say is it's a tragedy that he was never offered a pro sumo wrestling contract, because this next president could have been in the NFL, but he chose not to. Gerald R. Ford. Ford was simultaneously known as the most athletic and clumsiest president we've ever had. Ford was a star center and linebacker for the undefeated University of Michigan football team, leading them to back-to-back national championships and turned down offers to play for the Green Bay Packers and Detroit Lions. But just like Jimmy Carter, it only takes one thing to destroy that reputation. And for Gerald, it was eating shit falling down the stairs. From then on, he was Clumsy Ford, but no one was as messy as this next guy when it came to his love life.
Warren G. Harding.
Harding is what would happen if your friend going through their post-breakup hoe phase was accidentally made president. And he knew it too, famously saying,
I am not fit for this office and should have never been here.
I don't know if that's what he sounded like, probably not because it sounds British, but We're going with that. Instead of politics, he focused on his 7 mistresses, calling one of them a liar when she claimed he got her pregnant until 2015 when a DNA test proved that this was true. Although I don't know why anybody believed him, because he's also famous for saying,
It's a good thing I'm not a woman. I would always be pregnant. I can't say no.
the exact words you love to hear come out of your president's mouth.
James A. Garfield.
James A. Garfield is the biggest what-if president we've ever had. Man's IQ was estimated to be 10 less than Einstein's, was a published mathematician, and could write Latin with one hand and Greek with the other at the same time. But some deranged Frenchman shot and killed him 4 months into his term, so we'll never know what his legacy could have been. But after hearing about this next guy, you might think it's better to have no legacy at all.
James Buchanan.
I've hated this president since 4th grade, and my rage has only grown since. In 4th grade, we were pulling numbers from a hat to determine who we got for our president reports. I pulled 15, one away from Lincoln, and got this bitch. I was devastated. And guess what? He sucked in real life too, doing nothing to stop the Civil War, even calling for the US to split in his farewell address. So it's very satisfying to know I have legitimate reasons to hate him even in my adulthood.
John Tyler.
If TLC existed in the 1800s, President Tyler would have had a show called John, Letitia, and Julia, plus 15. Tyler's 2 wives spent a combined 11 and a quarter years of their lives pregnant to give birth to his 15 kids. And the most insane part is that even though Tyler was born in 1780, he still had a living grandson until May of 2025. What the hell?
James Monroe.
I can guarantee that all you theater freaks will have nipple chills by the end of this section, because Hamilton once accused Monroe of leaking details of his Mariah Reynolds affair to the press, with Monroe responding, "I am ready, get your pistols." And guess who stepped in to de-escalate the situation? Aaron Burr, sir. Ugh, I just had a Hamilgasm. And it's only fitting that our next president was president during the time that Hamilton the musical took over this country.
Barack Obama.
Am I literally the only person on this planet that didn't know Barack Obama was a smoker? He says he stopped on the campaign trail but started back up once he was president. Apparently he'd even bum them off interns occasionally. This feels like the time my sister and I found out that our elementary school music teacher smoked cigs, and it basically ruined our whole year. Either this is the biggest cover-up since Watergate, or I'm literally a dumbass. Probably the latter.
Ronald Reagan.
I had no idea that Ronald Reagan, once considered the face of the Republican Party, was secretly engaging in silly liberal hobbies. After surviving being shot in 1981, his wife Nancy wasn't taking any chances. So she hired an astrologer like the moon planet alignment hippie person to approve every presidential trip and news conference from here on out. I always associated star signs with libbed-up girls who like to collect crystals, but I'm happy to break down my biased view of astrology to now include old white Republican men. Thank you, Ronald.
John F. Kennedy.
JFK cheated on his wife like it was an Olympic sport and he was going for gold. Basically, JFK was our first hot president, and not only made your grandma blush, but other famous women, including Marilyn Monroe. He allegedly had a one-night stand with her, then passed her off to his younger brother RFK. But JFK was going for quantity, so he slept with a bunch of other women, including his own dad's longtime partner. It's alleged that he had 8 total affairs, and while it's clear that JFK's turn-on was women that weren't his wife, this next president's turn-on was one thing: chaos.
Andrew Jackson.
Andrew Jackson is what would happen if we bred the Tasmanian devil, an animal from the Muppets, and dropped him in the Oval Office. Jackson was out of his damn mind. When he won the presidency in 1829, he opened the White House to 20,000 absolutely plastered supporters who almost crushed him to death and almost did as much damage to the White House as Trump. He also famously had a pet parrot named Polly who he taught to cuss, and it got so bad that Polly had to be removed from Jackson's funeral for cussing out the mourners.
Fuck you.
And lastly, this absolute mad lad was almost killed in 1835 when a crazy dude shot at him twice, but when both guns jammed, Jackson went ultra instinct on this guy's ass, almost bashing his head in with a cane before being pulled off. Honestly, this was probably like a Christmas gift for Jackson, getting to beat the shit out of someone with absolutely no repercussions. While this might be his version of stress relief, this next guy blew off steam by, well, blowing.
Bill Clinton.
The words Bill Clinton and blow are basically like peanut butter and jelly at this point, but their history goes back even further than you think. Bill says he would have never won the presidency if he hadn't played his saxophone rendition of Heartbreak Hotel on a TV show in 1992. So I guess you could say his presidency both started and ended with the same thing: blowing.
George H.W. Bush.
George H.W. Bush is just like my grandpa, except if one of them liked to jump out of airplanes at 90. Here's a hint. It's not my grandpa. Bush Sr. legit went skydiving for his 80th, 85th, and 90th birthday. Can you imagine the sound of all that loose skin flapping in the wind? Because I sure can.
Franklin D. Roosevelt.
FDR was a big fan of American traditions, but specifically the tradition of shoving fat American glizzies in the faces of British royalty. I'm sorry. Because in 1939, FDR decided it was time to take some years off of the King and Queen of England's lives by serving them an all-American cancer speedrunning classic, hot dogs and beer. Now that's just patriotic.
Chester Arthur.
No one makes me feel more like a piece of shit for wearing my pants 4 days in a row than this guy. Because Chester, apparently known as our best-dressed president, owned a whopping 80 pairs of pants. So just remember, you are not ugly. You just need 80 more pairs of pants.
George Washington. Who knew that the daddy of America, George Washington,
could also annihilate Addison Rae on the dance floor? While Washington is known for many things, most people don't know that when the music turned up, no one's wives were safe from his smooth footwork and pelvic gyrations. If he was that generation's Michael Jackson, then this next guy was their Paula Deen.
Thomas Jefferson.
For you lactose intolerant people, I want to introduce you to your boogeyman, Thomas Jefferson, because he's credited with bringing two of the most stomach-gurgling, beautiful monstrosities to America: mac and cheese and ice cream, even though it was mostly his enslaved chef, James Hemings, who actually did all the cooking. Even though Jefferson penned the Declaration of Independence, I'd argue that without these two glorious foods, there'd be nothing to fight for anyways. And this next president would probably cease to exist without these junk foods that the founding fathers brought over.
Donald J. Trump.
I'm a staunch believer that we barely missed an alternate reality where Trump never became president because of one small, tiny obsession: Broadway! If you've been deep into Fox News for a while, take a seat, because what I'm about to tell you may cause you to faint. And for everybody else, you'll probably just do a collective, oh, that makes sense, once I tell you this story. For those who don't know, Donald is a Broadway lover. Like, so much that this clip of him talking about Phantom of the Opera exists.
And he said, "I'd love to have you as my guest. I'm opening up a musical called The Phantom of the Opera." And I said, "Oh." So I go in and I see this music. I said, "This thing is unbelievable." It didn't take long because the music is so good. And we play a lot of that music. I mean, I go to places when we want background music that's beautiful, it's great, everybody likes it. And by the end, you know, with the whole thing, with the gondolas and the candles and the whole thing coming out, it was like, I said, this thing is incredible.
You're gay.
Not only did he bust over Phantom's opening, but he also went on to produce his own Broadway show. Unfortunately for him and probably all of us, the show was a dud and he never produced a Broadway show again. All I can say is that you cannot convince me that Donald Trump, the Broadway producer, makes less sense than him as president. But the one thing he does have in common with our next president is their utter determination to do things without consent.
Lyndon B. Johnson.
Lyndon B. Johnson is proof that either HR does not exist at the White House, or it's about as useful as a hairstylist on Breaking Bad. After becoming president following JFK's assassination, 6'3.5" Lyndon B. Johnson became known for one thing: whipping his Johnson out in front of unsuspecting White House staff. On more than one occasion, Johnson allegedly was pissing next to a White House staffer and would turn to them while holding his giant trouser snake and ask if they'd ever seen anything so big in their life. Apparently, he named him Jumbo, and Jumbo was always around, whether he was happy, sad, angry, it did not matter. Apparently, one time while fuming after a reporter asked him why he started the Vietnam War, Johnson dropped his pants, swung Jumbo out, and shook him as he yelled, "Because of this!" I don't know about you, but I feel like that shit would get every single person watching this video fired from their job and put on a very special list. But hold on, it gets worse. Because Johnson reportedly would invite White House staff down to his pool to skinny dip, but as soon as their shorts were down, he'd point at their not-so-jumbo jumbos and start laughing, pointing, and screaming, "It's so small! It's so small!" Okay, so this might sound insane, but stories like this give me hope. Hear me out. While researching every president we've ever had, I've realized that we've had some great ones and some batshit insane ones. And guess what? Through all the turmoil, wars, mistresses, blatant racism, sexual harassers, both king-sized and fun-sized presidential lunatics, we are still here. So there's no one more fitting to end on than arguably our most virtuous president and probably the only president to be able to beat Lyndon B. Johnson in a sword fight.
Abraham Lincoln.
Lincoln was not only a hulking mass of a man, but a man that defined the core of who America should be. He was a wrestling champion, competing in 300 matches within 12 years before being inducted into the National Wrestling Hall of Fame. He was an outcast living in poverty in Kentucky. He was the commander-in-chief during a war that split America in two. And most importantly, he was 6'4" and 180 pounds. He's proof that America is pretty damn hard to break, no matter how hard we try. And if that's all I got from spending 125 hours drawing these guys, then it's a glimmer of hope I will hold on to when I think everything has gone to shit.